Pathfinder 2nd Edition is known for its reliable combat, yes? Or at least that's the sales pitch. The sales pitch is that if the GM follows the encounter building guidelines presented in both the GM core and I believe also the player core, then the actual difficulty of the encounter will turn out to be the stated difficulty of the encounter. Is that what actually happens? It does not. Well, it also does many times, but then sometimes it does not. What's going on here? What do people mean when they say that encounter building is reliable in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and what causes the variance in actual play? Hey everyone, Utkarsh from Spirit Bell Games here, and today we'll be talking about what affects the actual difficulty of an encounter at the table. And above all other factors, we have the dominance of the dice. Now, the dice are expected to speak politely and equivocally. They are supposed to be sometimes rolling high, sometimes rolling low, and doing so for both teams, the enemy team and the player character team. When they behave in this way, then yes, the encounter does become a little more reliable, or a lot more reliable, but sometimes they do not. Late last year, I had a game in which I was a player where the dice said that the GM must roll at least 3 natural 20s around. And on our side, we got a couple of nat 20s in the whole combat. It resulted in a severe encounter that caused a PC death. So above all of the other factors that we will discuss today, the dice will have their say. If the dice roll that the enemy team is going to be empowered this time around, then that will be true. And if they say that the PC's party will be empowered this time around, then that will be true. And there's little you can do to get around it, short of some extremely non-dice dependent player options like laying out difficult terrain or using force bolt, force barrage. So up above here are the dice. Then we have the middle layer, and this is where 3 different things are at play. One is the encounter building guidelines. Yes, whatever encounter that the GM builds, its challenge will at least be more or less difficult depending on how much encounter XP budget they assign to it. The second thing is the team composition and the team play. Teamwork, essentially. The more a party builds with synergies with each other's characters, the more likely they are to counteract the difficulty that the GM has set with the encounter building guidelines. So an extremely synergistic party, for example, a party with 2 frontline grapplers and trippers with a bunch of backline sharpshooters of various kinds. By sharpshooters, I mean like rogues, rangers, and gunslingers. That party will do better than what I believe that the encounter budget expects. A party that is highly optimized around the teamwork, the team synergies, can even go 2 levels beyond what the encounter building guidelines suggest. So a highly optimized party might be able to turn extreme threat encounters down not just to severe, but to moderate, whereas a regularly synergistic party can move it 1 level down, whereas a party that's built without knowledge of what anyone else is building, such as in Pathfinder Society, what tends to happen, that often encounters the challenge in the intended difficulty that the game guidelines lay out. But there is a third factor here that is equally relevant in adjusting the difficulty. And that factor is the matchup. The matchup is how well suited a party is for that particular type of challenge. From personal example, I ran what I thought would be a challenging, maybe a little bit threatening, but not too deadly fight, which was a player level +2 ghost facing 3 kineticists and a thaumaturge. Turns out that for that exact party composition, that ghost was extreme because they did not have any ways really, to get past all of its various resistances. The damage that kineticists are good at doing, it tends to come in smaller amounts, and it's great at handling groups of enemies. whereas versus a single boss and one that resists a lot of these small amounts of damage, they were making nearly no progress. And so both myself and the players realized that maybe we started looking for escape hatches, and then they pulled off a cinematic exit and then went and called some clerics to cleanse out this ghost after they had cleared the rest of the mine already. So that was a clear example of how the matchup can make the fight more or less difficult. If you have two people in the party that deal fire damage and you throw enemies that are weak to fire damage, that suddenly becomes an easy matchup. Whereas if you have a party that's built around all melee damage dealers and the attacks are coming from a flying ranged target, suddenly that's a terrible matchup. And so the matchup is something that can, again, move the encounter difficulty 1 or 2 levels above or below. And it's also worth considering the terrain and the lighting situation as part of this matchup. Interestingly, if any of you have seen the video that I talked about giving the edge to prepared casters, how preparation can help make a fight easier, this is the aspect that preparation helps with as well. If players know that they're going to go into a very difficult fight, but they have a chance to do some research or hear some rumors, gather information, and then prepare themselves, they can turn the matchup in their favor. They can come armed with damage that the target would be weak to, for example. And so at this middle layer, we have the encounter building guidelines, the team synergy, and the matchup that covers all the various factors such as enemy resistances, the terrain, and party preparation. And then just a bit below that, we have what I consider the thing that does affect combat difficulty, but not as much as people would like to think. This is character optimization. Now, I will say that yes, technically the game allows you to make very terrible characters if you just set your attack attribute to -1, for example, or you're a spellcaster that picks up all non-combat spells, then you can get to the point where you effectively are a non-combatant. But if you just do the bare minimum of having your attack score, attack attribute, the maximum that you can set it, giving some consideration to your armor class, picking some options that seem to synergize with your class, you can get very quickly to the point where you can be a respectable contributor to the combat. Now, if everyone across the board optimizes their characters, with each of them being roughly 20% better, yes, it can seem like there's an additional power equivalent to a whole new party member, but you won't ever have one player's contributions be double the effectiveness of another player playing the same class, but with a non-optimized build. And it's in that last part where that selling point proves to be true. When people say that Pathfinder encounter building guidelines work, they mean that they cannot be preempted easily by just individual character building. But as we've discussed, they can be preempted by the matchup, the team synergies, and the dice. At the end of the day, I do think we want all of these various factors working together because that's what makes the game dynamic and uncertain. If the combat actually flowed exactly as we wanted every single time as GMs, I assume that for many of us, it would become boring. At that point, you may as well just go write a novel. So there are elements of certainty that the encounter building guidelines bring for us, but there are also additional factors that can change it. With that in mind, I want to hear about your experience. Where do you think the encounter building guidelines land for you? Have you noticed extreme swings because of the matchup? Are you one of those GMs who has to continuously go double extreme just to present a decent challenge to your party members? Or do you find that the encounter building guidelines roughly work for your party? Let me know down in the comments. For now, this is me signing off, wishing you all engaging games.